Hello viewers, welcome to my channel and again this video is on MCO03. This is part 2 video and in the first video I shared you all the important topics of MCO03 up to unit 4 and let's try to find out what are the important topics that you should study in the further units and this is unit 5 and it is on measurement and scaling techniques. Now this is again ये ऐसा यूनिट है कि इससे क्वेश्चन आता ही आता है, ठीक है, तो बहुत अच्छे से इसको रिवाइज करना है आप लोगों को एंड these are all my study materials and written in a very simple language. Once like you can read and understand what is there in the concept. Okay, so basically we will start with levels of measurement. Now here in your syllabus there are basically 4 types of scales. The first is nominal scale, the other is ordinal scale, third one interval scale, and fourth one ratio scales. So all these scales are devised according to their levels. Okay, the first scale is the first level scale, that is nominal scale. The second level scale is ordinal, third level interval, and fourth level ratio scale. Okay, now let's try to understand what is this nominal scale. Now it is one of the most simplest scale and widely used in the measurement techniques, and here measurement is done simply by dividing the variables into simple different categories. Okay, it is like you can understand with this example. Like for example, if suppose we are to make a scaling or a scale that what is your gender. So we can divide this into male 1, female 2. That means 1 for male and 2 for female. So like this, like 2 main categories are here. One is male and the other is female. So it is so simple. This is called nominal scale and basically the names are used here. In ordinal scale, the data is known as all qualitative data, and these are grouped, named, and also they are ranked. And ordinal scale shows the relative ranking of the variables, and this gives the rank along with the categories. Like apart from the first scale, ordinal scale also gives rank. Now let's try to understand with a very simple example. Now for example, how would you rate the services of our staff? Now this is the question, and now here there are 5 options: excellent, very good, good, poor, and worst. So apart from giving the categories, now here all these are ranks given to different categories. So this is called ordinal scale. In the interval scale, as the name implies, intervals means the time difference, and when each rank is given an attribute, it becomes an interval scale. Attributes can be denoted in numerical or semantic format. The numerical format, the interval scales is indicated by numbers or figures, and in semantic formats the attributes are denoted with certain statements like excellent, very good, good, worst, like that. So this is the third scale, and in ratio scale we use ratio, right? Let's try to understand. It has the properties of an interval scale together with a fixed point 0. Now this is added to interval scale, that makes ratio scale. Better like straight away let's go to the example to understand this ratio scale. Now for example, the number of customers of a bank's ATM in the last 3 months is a ratio scale, because here interval is added, this 3 months, so this is interval, right? So like this. Okay, let's move on to the next question. This question came in June 2022 examination. Different types of scaling techniques to measure the attitude, and you must read, just go through this. Okay, and I don't think you will be getting this again. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. In fact, I have explained this in my previous video also, so I will share the link. If possible, you can also watch them. Okay, now let's move on to the next unit. This is unit 6, processing of data. Okay, first of all, let's see what are the steps involved in processing of data. And before that, let's try to understand what is processing of data. Now, processing of data is an intermediary stage between the collection of data and analysis of data. Now, this is very important. Collection of data and analysis of data. इसके बीच में जो हम लोग जो फंक्शन करते हैं, that is called processing. In other words, grouping. ग्रुप बनाते हैं, जो भी डेटा कलेक्ट करते हैं उनको ग्रुप्स में डिवाइड किया जाता है. ओके, नाउ द स्टेप्स. दीज आर द स्टेप्स, 4 स्टेप्स. फर्स्ट, एडिटिंग ऑफ डेटा. सेकंड वन, कोडिंग ऑफ डेटा. देन थर्ड, क्लासिफिकेशन ऑफ डेटा. एंड फोर्थ, tabulation of data. Now, one by one, let's try to understand the meaning of all these points. In editing of the data, as the name implies, we will edit the data. We will examine whether the data collected are true or false, whether they are useful for the studies or not. And the researcher must ensure that the data must be accurate and complete. And he should not destroy these original data. So all these things are done in editing of data. Okay, in coding of data, they are converted into codes. Now, coding is a process by which data are divided into groups and subgroups, and each group and subgroup is assigned a numerical or a symbol which is called a code. Okay, in classification of data, this is the third process. Classification is the process of dividing the data into, again, groups and classes according to their similarities and dissimilarities. That means here, attributes are added, and the researcher must ensure that the groups should be homogeneous and heterogeneous. So like that, homogeneous data should be grouped in one place and heterogeneous data in the other group. So like this. Now again, classification of data. There are few types of classification, like geographic classification, which is done on the basis of location, geographic location. In chronological classification, we divide the data in terms of time, okay, or date. In qualitative classification, we generally take the attribute of the data, that is quality. And in quantitative classification, we consider the quantity, how many factor will be considered in quantitative classification, right? The fourth step is tabulation of data. In tabulation, इसके ऊपर short notes भी आता है कि write a short note on tabulation of data. Now, it refers to the systematic and logical presentation of data in rows and columns, which helps in the comparison and analysis of data. It helps to understand the complex data quite easily, and again, we can also find some mistakes if there any, and it condenses the data into the simplest form, and like this. So tabulation is all about presenting the data in a logical way, in a systematic way. All right, so the next concept is what are the requisites of a good statistical table. Okay, so for a good statistical table, it should be very clear and simple. It should be short and self-explanatory. The rows and columns should be numbered properly, and the table should not be too narrow or too wide, so that it can be seen and analyzed properly. And there should be uniform spaces between the rows and columns. The units of measurement should be clearly shown in the statistical table. All the columns figures should be properly aligned. Abbreviation should be avoided as far as possible in the table. So like this, you can write. Okay. The next concept, the next unit, in fact, unit 7, diagrammatic and graphical presentation of data. Okay. Now this question is an important one, like significance of visual presentation and diagrammatic or graphical representation of data. How this diagrammatic presentation is useful or important for a business enterprise. Now these are few useful points, like it helps in comparative analysis. Okay, the second one, like we can compare the previous data with the current data, and it helps in taking decisions, because on the basis of decision we can make a research, and from research whatever the conclusion is derived, on the basis of that we can take decisions. It is easy to understand, even the illiterate people can also understand from graphical presentation, and it is very attractive. When we draw figures like pie chart, bargram, histogram, so they are quite attractive, and they take less time and cost. That means they are inexpensive, and they are free from mistakes. Generally, when we draw diagrams, there are very less chances of errors, and again it is useful for illiterates. So like this you can expand the point if you like. The next topic is different types of diagrams and diagrams that we use in statistics. The first one is the line diagram. Simple diagram, by dint of line we present the data. In bar diagrams we draw bars or columns. In histogram again it is an extended form of bar diagrams. Only the bars are compact. There is no gaps between the bars. In pie chart we generally represent the data in the form of a circle, and again each part of the circle is divided into degrees, so like that. In pictograph we use different symbols or pictures, right? Now this is the difference between a simple bar diagram and multiple bar diagram. This question also strike in the previous year exam. In simple bar diagram, basically it is either horizontally or vertically it can be constructed, but in multiple bar diagram there are more than bars. In fact, I made a video showing of numerical on simple bar diagram. You should watch that, it is there in my playlist, right? And in simple bar diagram, comparative study cannot be made with the help of this, but here in multiple bar diagram we can compare different data. Okay, as the name implies, multiple bars are there, so we can easily compare like which bar is smaller and which one is bigger. In simple bar diagram, data related to one variable is recorded, and here there can be more than one variables. So like that, and one more, this one last one is important one, that bars we generally use a single color, but in multiple bar diagrams we use different colors. Okay guys, let's move on to the next unit 8, statistical derivatives and measures of central tendency. And first of all, let's see what is statistical derivative. This question came in June 2022 examination. And basically, these derivatives are the quantities obtained by simple computation of the given data, and they help to show the relationship among the variables. And commonly we use these three derivatives in statistics. First is percentage, second one ratio, and third rate. Okay, so these are derivatives. And the next concept is what is measures of central tendency. Now, a central tendency is a typical or central value of a probability distribution. These are also known as averages. It helps to represent a huge data by a single value and is often compared between two periods. So we have done statistics, and statistics all about averages, mean, median, mode, so they are nothing but averages. And the properties of measures of central tendency are that or like the question may come that what are the ideal measure of central of tendency. It should be simple to calculate and understand. It should include all the observations. It should be capable of further algebraic treatment. Now this is very important one. And the fourth one is it is capable of making comparisons. Let's see the different types of measures of central tendency. There are basically 6 types of measure of central tendency. The first one is mean, second one median, third mode, fourth one weighted arithmetic mean, fifth one geometric mean, and sixth one harmonic mean. So you might get a question on this, like what are the different types of central tendency, and it's a very very common topic, and we can write with our own knowledge that When you want to define mean, it is the sum of all the values of observations divided by the total number of observation. And again, there are advantages and disadvantages of mean. So this concept I have also explained in my previous video. So this is very simple one, like not very difficult. You can write in your own words. And when we talk about median, it represents the middle value of the data that measures the central item of the data, and half of the items lie above the median and the other half below it. So then again, you should learn about the advantages and disadvantages of median. In the same way, now mode is the value of data that appears maximum number of times in a series. And mode again, like you should also learn about its merits and demerits. And when we talk about weighted average mean, that means mean is added with average. The term weight in statistics stands for the relative importance of the different variables. And in this method, prices or quantities are the multiples with their corresponding weightage. So this is nothing but a type of mean, the extended part of mean. And geometric mean is defined as the nth root of the product of all the observations, and it is applicable in case of any variable is negative or zero. Basically, you might get one numerical question from mean, median, mode, and weighted average. Weighted average is most likely to come in the exams, so you might get a numerical on this. Okay, now quickly let's move on to the next unit, unit 9, measures of variation and skewness. Okay, so let's try to find out what is variation. Variation is defined as the measurement of the scattering of the mass of data in a series about an average, which is called measure of variation. Variation measures the extent to which the items scattered in the average, like scattering, dispersion of the these things, variables. And it is also known as dispersion or scatter or spread. And its importance in statistics is also very important one. It helps to measure the reliability of an average. It helps to compare the different data, and it helps to establish control of variability, and it helps to use other statistical measures effectively by using variation. Okay. The next concept is skewness. Now this is a very common topic. Every year it strikes in the exams. Skewness is the degree of asymmetry observed in probability distribution, and the measure of skewness tells us the direction of the distribution. And symmetry means the variables are equidistant from the average from both the sides. Actually, this will be more clearer, this concept skewness, from this data, from this chart. You can understand better about skewness. Now here you can see that in all this, like let's first study this middle observation. Now here you can see here this middle line. Okay, so this is mean, median, mode are equal, and you can see these curves, both the sides, the curves are tilted uniformly. Okay, so this is symmetrical distribution, and in this particular graph you can see this curve is little bit flatter on the right hand side. So this is positive skewness, and here the opposite of this one. So like this, there are three types of skewness. One is symmetrical, positive, and negative skewness. So there are a lot of concepts which can be easily understood by diagrams, so it is very important to draw diagrams in the exams also. Okay, the next unit is unit 10, correlation and regression, one of the most important chapter. And in June 2022, also like a few questions were there from here. Okay, and when we talk about correlation and regression, it is more clearer from this table of comparison. Now this question came in June 2022 examination, the difference between correlation and regression. But you might get as a short note also on correlation or regression. So you must learn these topics properly. Okay. Now let's try to understand what is correlation. Correlation is the relationship between two or more variables, whereas regression shows the nature of relationship. This is important keywords. And both here variables are dependent on each other, whereas in regression the variables are not dependent on each other, they are independent. In correlation, it doesn't show the cause and effect relationship, but regression shows the cause and effect relationship. In fact, you will not understand from here. Better, let's move on to one you know very good example which I have written here. Okay. Now in this example, now you can see here, for example, the relationship between age and knowledge can be found by correlation, whereas the level of knowledge prediction is done by regression. So like, as we know that with the age we grow our knowledge. So these two variables, their relation can be found or represented by correlation. But how much knowledge we acquire during the age, so that is the matter of regression. So like this. Okay, let's move on to the next unit, unit 11, and this is on time series. Time series, let's try to understand the meaning of this. When quantitative data are arranged in order of their occurrence, the resulting statistical series is called a time series. And it consists of statistical data which are collected and recorded over successive time. And it helps to understand the past behavior of the variables. It also helps in forecasting the future behavior of the variables. It helps to make comparison between the different series. So like this. So it is nothing but the quantitative data that are arranged in the order of their occurrence. That means in their analogical series, in their analogical order. Okay, so like this. And basically, time series has four components. One is trend variation, which is represented by T. Then seasonal variation, cyclic variation, and irregular vibration. You might get a short question on time series. So prepare this question well. Now this graph also you can draw for this. Okay, let's move on to unit 12, index numbers. Index numbers are defined as the spatial averages which helps in comparing the data or variables of two or more situations. More or less it is similar to those averages, measures of central tendency. They are all children of one mother. So in simple words, index numbers is an average to measure the changes over a period of time. Now this is the most important sentence which can easily define index numbers, and it doesn't have any unit because it is a ratio. And let's move on to the uses. Now this is the most important one. If you are going to get the question, you can get this one. Uses. Basically, index numbers are quite useful for comparing data, for taking management decisions on the basis of comparison. We can frame policies by dint of index numbers. We can also find out the cost of living in economics. Basically, the government uses this index numbers. And even like these index numbers are quite often used by stock market researchers and valuers. They help to measure the relative change over a period of time, and they are basically the economic barometers. It is very popular in statistics, and we can compare the standard of living of the people. So like this, there are some issues in the construction of index numbers. The basic issues are the collection of data. Sometimes the data are not collected properly, or there are some errors in the data. So that makes index numbers a little bit hard to believe. And the second problem is that the selection of the base year. Now this is one problem, because selecting a base year, and the base year should be it should be a very normal year. It should not be an abnormal year. So it is very difficult to find out a base year for a company on the basis of which we can make comparisons. Okay, so the third problem is selection of an appropriate index. There are so many types of index numbers, and selecting a proper suitable index number is a very complex job. Now these are the different types of index numbers we use. The first one is price index numbers, which is based on prices of goods or commodities. The second one is quantity index numbers, which is based on the quantity of goods and services. The third one is value index numbers, which is a combination of both these index numbers. Okay. The next unit is probability distribution, and let's see what is this probability distribution all about. In fact, let's start with normal distribution. You might get a short note on this, very important one. Normal distribution is generally, it is symmetric about the mean. Just now I told you about when we are talking about skewness, and the data near the mean are more frequent, and it looks like a bell shape, and therefore it is also known as bell curve. Okay, the figure is there, as you can see here. It is just like a bell, and this middle line is called the mean, and both the sides are well balanced. So this is called normal distribution. Okay. The next concept here I have given is a short note on random variables. Now what is this random variables? A random variable is a variable whose value is unknown, and or a function that assigns the values to each of an experiment's outcome. A random variable can be either discrete. Discrete means having a specific value, or continuous. That means any value in a continuous range. And generally we use random variables in probability and statistics. It is quite commonly used here. Risk analysts, they often use random variables to estimate the probability of an adverse happening. And the random variables can be either discrete, or just now we told about this. Discrete is about having a specific value, and continuous about any values that is continuous. Okay, let's move on to next unit, test of hypothesis. We will start with estimation and testing of hypothesis. Now this question came in June 2022 exams, so just go through this if you like. I don't think this question will be repeated. And again, there was a question, this question, interval estimation. This was also in June 2022. Okay, so let's start with this. The meaning of hypothesis. We have actually done this hypothesis in unit 3. So little bit more extension part is given here, like what are the significance of formulating hypothesis in research, like what are the uses of hypothesis in research. So this topic we have already discussed in the previous video. Okay, so let's move on to the next unit, unit 17, chi-square test, and let's try to find out. This question also came in June 2022 examination, and I don't think it will be repeated. So, but more or less, you should just go through this. Like you might get a short note or like that. And you also got a question in June 22 about the conditions of applying chi-square test. So I have written all this in my study materials. And okay, unit 18 is on interpretation of data. Now what is interpretation? Interpretation is the process of drawing conclusions and inferences after a careful analysis of data. And basically this interpretation of data in simple words means you are giving your reports, how you are interpreting your research, your solution to the management. And the researcher should take the following precautions while making an interpretation. It must be objective. He must understand the problem for which he has found out the solution, and he must appreciate the relevance, like it should be relevant to the problem. And he or she must ensure that adequate and accurate data are collected and they are properly classified and analyzed. As far as possible, errors should be avoided, and interpretation of data must be done within the limits, the time frame and cost. So that should be also taken into account. Now, generalization. This question also came in June 2022 exams. So let's skip this question. And again, if you want to understand the meaning of this, you can go back to my previous video. Okay. Next unit is unit 19, report writing. Report writing, we have heard this word quite a number of times in English language. Reporting, let's try to find out the meaning of this. Reporting is the means of communication where information is shared through reports. In other words, reporting is communicating the facts, data, and information through reports to the person for whom such facts and data are collected and compiled. That means you are reporting to the management and you must provide all the necessary data which is required by the management to take decisions. And to write a good report, you must take into account that the report should be very accurate, the data in the report should be very accurate, it should be simple to understand, it should be reliable, it should be economical. That means the reporting should not be very expensive, and it should be submitted in time, and it should be complete in all respects. That means it should answer the problems. Okay, the stages in the preparation of report. You might get a question from here, reporting, as far as like my sense goes. So prepare this topic well. First one, identify the problem, like what is the problem for which you are finding the solution. Then make hypothesis of the problem, then collect data, then analyze and process the data, and then finally write the report. So more or less very simple. We are doing these stages and processes quite a number of times in this topic MCO03. And this question to make a questionnaire. Now this question also came in June 2022 exams. So preparing a questionnaire, if you are getting a questionnaire, that means it's very easy one to prepare. You'll be given a case and you can divide the case like this. Now this is one format or specimen that I have taken from railway. Okay, like railway services here. So the question was to prepare a questionnaire on the railway services. So like this, my dear friends, these were the important questions of MCO03 that you must prepare, and a very best of luck for the exams, and thank you very much for watching my videos.